Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's insightful webinar on the topic Ethics of Drone Design. We are honored to have here with us Dylan Cawthon. He's a very insightful and well-experienced in this field and has recently authored a book titled The Ethics of Drone Design. So who better to have this discussion with us? My name is Mfon Udechukwu, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. I'm also very excited to be a part of this discussion and also to explore the ethical dimensions of drone design. Dylan will guide us through this presentation today, and also he will explore issues related to privacy, safety, surveillance, and environmental impact, and more, shedding light on also some complex ethical choices that technology designers and policy makers have to confront. Our aim today is to deepen our understanding of these critical issues and explore how we can design and deploy drone in ways that align with our shared values and respect for humanity. So feel free to use the chat to ask your questions. This is going to be a very interactive webinar, and we count on you for your participation. He will give a short presentation, and after that, we'll have the floor open for discussions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah, as was mentioned earlier, I am going to, I would like to have a very interactive kind of session with you all, because I sit here in my office most of the time thinking about drones, thinking about ethics, but you all are out there in the field. So I'm very keen to hear what you think about these topics. First of all, I was hoping I could get a bit of an insight into where everyone's coming from, just so I have a bit of orientation to think about who my audience is. Can I get a little bit of feedback from the audience? And please let me know where you're from physically and what your interaction with drones is. And in the meantime, I will switch and add my slides to the screen. I'm not hearing anybody. Mfon, can you help me out?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yep. I see some people writing in the chat. That's okay.
Yes.
Yep.
You can also unmute yourselves and just say where you're from and what's your name. Maybe that would be easiest. Don't be shy.
Yeah, please. Okay, I see that we have someone, drone pilot from Flying Labs in Kenya. Awesome. We have some projects in Kenya as well, me and my drone research group. Let's see.
I have Diego from Brazil.
Nice, welcome. Diego, is Diego working with drone operations, drone design, logistics? Anybody know?
Yeah, he has recently joined the Global Network. I think majority of his focus is actually on drone design, more from the research side. Yeah, he has lots of experience in this field. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, Diego, yeah, welcome. Nice. Okay, I think I'll just let those sort of trickle in as we go. Yeah, and then get an impression of who's there from Morocco. Nice. Okay, so you're all a very global, a very global audience. I'll do my best to try and address, things from a global perspective. Nice, Nepal. Okay, excellent. I read some research from a colleague that did some work in Nepal about how drones had maybe some good possibilities to protect people from avalanches, but the people didn't want to move because they knew where the good farmland was. Drone data officer, nice. Tanzania, welcome. And Bangladesh. Okay, wow, you all are all over. This is super exciting. Most of the examples I'm going to show you are from Denmark, and then also a little bit from Africa as well, but mostly from Scandinavian and African contexts. So we'll see if they translate. Okay, I think I'll start going then with my slides. I have some different things to show. Basically, what I want to do is I want to give you a quick rundown introduction to what I talk about in this book. The Ethics of Drone Design is my first book, and I'm very proud of it. I hope the main reason I wrote it was that I was hoping that it would make a difference out there in the world. So I hope that other drone designers, drone engineers, drone operators read it, or at least are engaged in this discussion and can give feedback and can help us try to make the world better with drone technology. Yes, let me see if I can put on my slides. And then I noticed in the past when I do this, I can't see myself, which is a bit strange, but let's see here. 1 second, please.
So while you're looking for your slides, I can also add that I can see people from Angola, South Africa, Benin, Nepal again, just looking through the lists. Speaking of the flying labs, also Togo flying labs, Namibia flying labs. So we're truly a global team here in this webinar.
Nice. Excellent. So yeah, I will go through and present a bit of about the book, and then I'm very interested to have a discussion afterwards. So I'll get going. We covered this a little bit, who you are. I think it's important that you understand me and who I am and where I'm coming from in order to sort of understand what the context of this book is. So I start with some origin story, kind of Marvel type of approach. So I've always been kind of a nerdy kid, I guess. This is me when I was like 11 or 12 years old, and I was building remote control airplanes just as a hobby. I didn't think of it as a career at the time. It was just something that I really enjoyed doing in my free time. And it was back in those times, it was like kind of like people view video games now. It's not that people thought it was a great use of your time, but at least it sort of kept me out of trouble. And my parents were like, okay, at least he's out of trouble. He's in the basement and he's not getting into any kind of mischief. So that's kind of how it started. I feel like now it's kind of come full circle. I'm kind of like a professional drone nerd now, which is a bit ironic. Yeah, I kind of do the same things as I did when I was 11 or 12 years old, which is pretty fun. So yeah, my background is as a mechanical engineer, and I got my first real engineering job as a manufacturing engineer at Boeing when I was in my mid-20s. And yeah, I helped them develop the 777 freighter, which is a new kind of aircraft, cargo aircraft based on the passenger version. And so my job was to figure out the manufacturing, or help play a small role in figuring out the manufacturing process of this new airplane. So it was like, how do we join together all the big sections of the aircraft to make sure that it was within specification and didn't cost too much. That was a pretty cool job. There was like 30,000 people up there. That was up at Boeing, north of Seattle in Washington. So yeah, really cool experience. And yeah, felt like a proper engineer there. I thought Boeing was like a super cool company at the time. Then I found out that there was something even cooler, which was people that made prototype aircraft. So I went and worked for a company called Scaled Composites in Southern California. They're out there in the desert in Mojave. And if you've ever heard of space tourism, Richard Branson and all of these people making space tourism, then you might have heard of Scaled Composites. Scaled Composites is the company that produced the prototype spacecraft for space tourism. So this is really, really wild stuff. When I was there, there was maybe 300 people that were making brand new aircraft out of composite materials. And they were designing, building, and flying on average 1 new aircraft per year. So the speed of development there was really, really fast. And my job there, I worked on a couple of different aircraft, but the biggest one was this. It's called the Stratolaunch, and it's an aircraft with a 117-meter wingspan. It's the world's largest aircraft and uses the engines from Boeing 747s. I don't know if you can see in this image, but these tiny little dots here in between the two fuselages are the people. And so I was the manufacturing engineer in the early stages of the development of that aircraft. So that was pretty wild. Basically, it's a high altitude launch platform. In between these two bodies of the vehicle, there will be a rocket, and this thing will fly to high altitude, and then the rocket will launch off from there, saving a lot of fuel. So that was pretty cool, but also I would say not my favorite place to live. It was not very fun in the desert. It was kind of depressing. I had a cool job, but I wasn't really sure if I was actually making the world better. This is about the time where I started to question a bit of these aerospace projects that I was a part of. And slowly, I would say that over the years, that has manifested into the kind of work that I do now. So after that, I worked at a small drone startup company in Denmark. I developed this drone here. It's a hexacopter used for filmmaking. It's about 1.5 kilos. And yeah, we were a small company and we eventually ran out of money. So this one never made it into production, unfortunately. And I think I've been working at the university now for 8 years. I'm now an associate professor. I finished my master's degree while I was here. I did that in product development and innovation. And then a couple of years ago, I did a PhD, and my PhD was about ethics in drone design. And now the book is sort of a continuation of that, and with some new results. And myself, and my colleagues here at the Drone Center try to make drones for the benefit of society, which I would say is very similar to what We Robotics is trying to do. Actually, my first research paper in 2019 was about We Robotics case study. And I investigated what you all had done and tried to look at the human values that were supported and some of the risks and challenges, and if the drone could be designed in a better or different way. And yeah, that's one of my more highly cited papers. So I think that's pretty interesting. But as you all have probably experienced, working with ethics and human values and benefiting society and humanitarian aspects of technology is very complicated. It's very challenging to quantify or to qualify how successful you are. And I think that engaging with human values directly, sometimes we have this technology first and then humans. And I think what we need to do is flip this priority, and we need to go humans first, and then technology supports the human aspects. So that's what I'm going to present here. A couple of case studies of drones that I've developed, trying to put the human aspects first, and then developing the technology so that it supports those aspects. And as I said, yeah, that's kind of my mission now, is I'm trying to use technology and ethics to make the world better somehow. And I appreciate that this is a very challenging task. And to be honest with you, I don't even know that I'm successful at it. Some days I think I should, that it's an impossible task, but I do try. So these are the 4 characters in the book. There is a medical transportation drone up at the top left, a search and rescue drone, a drone for educational purposes in the bottom left, and then an artwork in the bottom right. And I'm going to take you through these 4 drones one at a time, briefly mentioning some of the human values and technological capabilities that they have. And they basically go from like very practical. The yellow drone that you see there is quite practical. And then they get a bit more far out, trying to look at more speculative design, more, and then getting even farther out into like basically artwork. And the one at the bottom right is a very abstract kind of art. So yeah, this is the main work that I did in my PhD. It's a Danish healthcare drone. It's for taking blood samples from a small island south of the island that I live on into the main hospital. And I imagine that a lot of We Robotics people work with this situation as well. I'll show you a quick video of it. Assuming that it works. Yep. Yes, so that was a rocky first start, but that's how it goes with first flights. Sometimes they don't end up very well. But yeah, the aim with that drone was I wanted to try and enhance human welfare as much as possible while mitigating as much risk and harm to the public or other people that might be somehow exposed to the operation. And there's a number of ways that I did that. One thing was I made this drone very small and lightweight, which made it inherently safe. And then its task was simply to transport 1 or 2 medical samples. So it wasn't for routine delivery of all of the samples, which would be maybe some kilos. This was just for those very urgent, very rare circumstances where you need to get a sample from the clinic to the hospital very rapidly. And so the drone itself is very, very small. It's, as you saw, it's 1.2 kilos, and it's made of foam, and it's just quite, blunt. And even though it did crash and not fly as we had hoped, its inherent risk was extremely small. So even if it had flown into something, it wouldn't have done any damage. It also had some privacy preserving features, which protected the privacy of people that were basically around the drone. It also had a telepresence operation. So that means that a remote pilot would actually be flying it. And the idea there is to create a good and meaningful type of work. Also taking advantage of all the skills and competencies that a human pilot has compared to some kind of autonomy, which can sometimes be quite dumb in some senses. And as I said earlier, there was a lot of risk mitigation that took place. So you can see here on these images, we have this clear cargo bay. We have some RFID tags to prevent, hopefully, people putting the wrong things in the drone. We have the temperature monitoring thing there. And we have all of this. We actually have a thing that you plug into the drone to make sure that it's authorized to launch. So that way people can't just fly the drone without authorization. I think that's one of the main challenges that we have within cargo drone cargo drone development, is making sure that people do not carry cargo that's dangerous or harmful. And so that's this is one approach, is making a small cargo bay like this. You could also see that it has this very bright yellow color, and that's because it's supposed to be identified with the Danish healthcare, and that's what the healthcare, that's what the ambulances in Denmark look like. So again, the visual aspect of it and identification, making it clear, where it's from is really important. The next drone here is this one. It is a search and rescue drone, and the main thing that I was trying to investigate here was trying to understand and support human-human interaction. So what we often do with drones is we automate systems and we replace humans and we add distance between people. And what I wanted to do was eliminate that, or at least reduce it as much as possible. So basically this is a flying Skype call. And the idea is if you have someone lost or injured, the pilot will land this drone nearby them, and then the rescuer will, their image will be on the screen, and then the person can interact with them directly. So it's quite a ridiculous prototype. I think it could fly for 5 minutes because it had this huge battery and this massive screen, and it was all very impractical. But basically it was a proof of concept, and we want to explore this idea of human-human interaction. And I can show you quick video. There it is, just flying, looking quite strange. You can also see that it's an asymmetrical drone, so it has a very obvious front. And people find that much less unsettling because they have an idea of where the sensors are looking, where the drone is looking, basically. And here's a flight. So that drone very much looks like a UFO. I think we should redesign the lighting. But the lighting was also important because in a search and rescue type of scenario, there might be a helicopter flying nearby, and you want to make sure that the helicopter doesn't run into the drone. So again, the visuals are an important part of the design. Another aspect, I'm not sure if you noticed it before, but that drone was actually made out of wood. And myself and a colleague named Nikolai did a lot of work on developing these high-performance wooden drone structures. So when I first told people that I made a drone out of wood, they thought it was ridiculous. Then we went into the lab and made some mechanical tests of this structure. It uses some hardwood at the top and bottom, and then ingrained balsa wood as a structural core. And the strength to weight ratio is very good. It's actually better than some carbon fiber plates. Not quite as good as carbon fiber tubes yet. but it's quite good performance, and it's biodegradable, it's renewable, it's less toxic. So I think there's quite a lot of promise in this direction. The third drone is this one. I call it the bamboo drone, or the educational drone. I think you can see it behind me here. The first prototype. So the idea here was designing for justice. So who in the world has access to drone technology? I guess people at We Robotics really know this very well. Typically, it's rich people. And to me, this doesn't seem very fair. So my idea was, could I make a very low-cost drone that would allow people in other countries that don't have access to as many resources as we do in Denmark to be able to understand drones, build drones, and then use them for their own uses, rather than having them come from the outside with all this different stuff that outsiders want. So in the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the prototype, and actually behind me, you can also see it. And to the left, you can see the students in Sierra Leone in West Africa that built their own version. So first, I made a prototype here in Denmark. Yes, and eventually got it to fly. As you can see, it's very simple. My objective was to make it very, very low cost. It's made out of a bunch of bamboo sticks. It's covered with plastic film, and it uses some cardboard for the flight control surfaces and some fabric for the tail. And so then I went to Sierra Leone. I got funding through Engineers Without Borders, and I had a partner university there in Freetown. And I met up with a bunch of students, talked to them about ethics, drone design, and then also help them to put together their own drone. So we can see, and this is their very first time ever flying a drone. So it's not easy to make a drone. So I think that they experienced that, but it's so cool. Now they have a little bit of hands-on experience with drones, and to me, that definitely increases justice and fairness in the world if we can give access to technology to more people. The final drone is not even really a drone; it's an artwork. I call it the spiritual drone. And in this one, I wanted to try and explore ideas that were about, what if we didn't just use drones to make money or to transport things or to collect data on people? What if we use drones or technology in a way that sort of spread good vibes and created sort of like good energy in society? So what I did was I made this artwork. And the idea with it is that in the front, it has this bundle of sage. And sage has this idea of, if you light sage and then you let the smoke go around, it's supposed to be cleansing in some cultures. So that was my idea. Use a drone-like thing to lift sage up into the air and spread good vibes through the community. And here's a little video of it. I'll play a little bit of it. So that's the spiritual drone. Yeah, it was exhibited during the pandemic. So, yeah. So those are the different drones. I want to briefly mention the methodology that I use a lot, which is called value sensitive design. And what makes it kind of interesting, I think, is that it has this ethics phase. It also has an empirical phase, which is like looking at the social impact of technology. And then we try to use those inputs and make technology that sort of supports positive human values. And it's a very interdisciplinary type of approach. Yeah, and very contextually situated. So a Danish drone would be much different than one that we would make in Sierra Leone, for example. As an engineer, I was not super familiar with different human values, but there are many that have been written about, and here's a few of them. So I guess a lot of us are concerned about human welfare. So just trying to make people's physical, mental, psychological well-being better, as well as their material welfare. There's some other ones that I think are really interesting. So for example, calmness. I've done some research about using drones with special kind of propeller designs that are still, you can still hear them, but they're not as annoying as traditional drones. So I think we could do a lot to enhance calmness in this world. And yeah, of course, environmental sustainability is something that that I think is ever present or should be ever present in our work. And I won't go into it in too much detail, but there's a lot of different ethics tools that we can use. You don't have to be an ethics expert in order to work a bit with it. And one that I developed together with my mentor at TU Delft is an ethical framework for the development of drones in public healthcare. So at the top is very abstract things like human autonomy and justice and understandability. And then below that is much more applied type of ethics. So human welfare and safety, security, trust, and so on. Basically, what we do is we take these very abstract values and then we eventually narrow them down into design requirements. So we try and make technology that supports all these different human values. I just wanted to give you a couple of reflections on how I think it's going with bringing technology ethics into the real world. To be honest, it's very challenging. Sometimes it's like a big crash, like this is me throwing a very expensive drone into a swamp in West Africa. So it's been a challenge. That's one of the reasons that I wrote the book. I see a lot of resistance or a lot of reasons that this is challenging, and one of them is economic. And I really like this quote from Max Neef. Says, "The purpose of the economy is to serve the people and not the people to serve the economy." I think sometimes we get this backwards, and we're just chasing after whatever can make the most money, not so much what's going to make the world better. I also see a lot of technological solutionism going on in the world. Sometimes I think I might actually be a part of this. For a while here at my university, we had this slogan, "Keep calm, engineers will save the world." And I used to believe this, but I don't think that I do anymore. And the reason for that is I think that social change has probably a much bigger impact than technology. If we combine the two, I think we could have very positive outcomes. But sometimes technology is not always making the world better. Sometimes it's actually hindering us. So yeah. I think we have a lot of challenges as drone engineers and drone operators. I will just mention a very few of them in the next couple of slides, just so that we can remember that we still have a lot of work to do. I'm very concerned about drones and privacy violations. I can just imagine all of the surveillance that we already experience online. and now it's going to be out in the real world. So it's not just going to be cookies or tracking of us on our mobile phones. It could actually be drones flying out in society, and surveilling us in public or private spaces. That really concerns me. So then I think as drone engineers, we should be actively working to how do we create privacy preserving systems within drone technology. I'm also concerned about our displacing work. So there's a very popular study that suggested maybe up to half of the jobs in the United States are at high risk of being automated. I think it's similar in Denmark and other rich countries. So yeah, if we just continue to automate things, we will have a big problem, which is there won't be any jobs. And I think it's safe to say that there are many meaningful jobs out there that we should preserve. So we should be developing technology to enhance meaningful human work rather than replacing it. And I'm particularly concerned about drones and violence. So this is from a couple of years ago, 2019. This was a kamikaze drone. We're seeing much more use of drones in conflicts. Ukraine and Russia are both using them against one another. I don't think that they're necessarily creating so many casualties, but they are very good at causing fear. So I think that they are weapons of terror on both sides. And yeah, you can see that in the news. There's so much violence going on these days that is facilitated by technology. That really concerns me. I also remember for a while that this hashtag drones for good was something that We Robotics and other humanitarian organizations used. I think Zipline also used it a lot. Now I've started to see it pop up in military contexts. So people think if the drone is killing your enemy, then it's a good drone. And I would question that. So I'm concerned about this as well. Yeah, I often think, what are technologies of peace, and are we investing in those? This is another example of an artwork that I created some time ago. It was called Kites for Peace, and it's basically people flying kites together. And I have a short video It was a very windy day in Denmark. But to me, that's an example of the technology of peace. I think I'll end very soon. This is another quote that I really like. It says, "Technology without ethics allows us to do stupid things in a very clever way." I think sometimes as engineers, especially, we're so clever and so excited about new technology that sometimes we're more fascinated with the technology than we are with the ethics. And what I would really like to do is try to combine these two, because I think it's definitely possible. Yeah, and I think that's all I have for my presentation. You're welcome to check out the book. I would really be honored if you did. It's quite expensive, so there is a discount code you can see here. And also there's an ebook that you can buy that's quite a bit less expensive than the hardcover. And my publishers told me that soon they will come out with a soft cover, which will be also less expensive. So yes, and this has been a very collaborative effort. I wrote the book, but I worked with so many different people, and this is just some of them. And yeah, there's just so many people that supported this kind of work. And it's very interdisciplinary, very collaborative. So I'm just one person that's sort of like this, trying to line up the spider web of all these other people. And it's really been really wonderful to be a part of that. Yes, thank you. That's what I have to say.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And now we have the floor to answer your questions. Okay, we have a question here from Lafifa Bangladesh Flying Labs asking for a link to the book. I can share that, or Dylan, if you have it handy, we can share, but I also have it as well from my side.
Yeah, I have it somewhere. Let's see. Yeah, you can buy it from Routledge, Taylor and Francis.
And now we'd love to hear your perspectives on ethical considerations in drone design.
Sure.
I know we have a couple of people here who have also designed some drones. Would love to hear what were the considerations you had when working on these drone designs.
Sure.
Feel free to unmute or use the chat. While we expect questions, okay. My colleague Elsa, I liked what you said about drones for peace. How do you feel like we can better our work for ethics, safety culture, and growth within the general everyday use of drones?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of learning a bit of the tools of ethics and then practicing. I think it's just like anything else. It just takes a bit of practice.
Yeah.
So I've seen examples of students that I've had. They have been sort of very traditionally trained engineers, robotics engineers, drone engineers. And with a little bit of help, a little bit of guidance, a little bit of understanding into ethics tools, they've really come far very quickly. So for example, the search and rescue drone, I developed that together with 2 master's students. And within a couple of months, I gave them a bunch of things to read and introduced them to some different ethics tools. They were able to take those on and incorporate them into their master thesis, and I think really engage with ethics in a meaningful way. So for example, they were thinking a lot about using an AI algorithm to try and search for people using computer vision. And I was asking them questions like, first of all, is that a good thing to do? Do we want humans doing that work? Do search and rescue personnel have a specific, do they have specific knowledge or skill at this? And maybe that's a skill that we should maintain. Could that technology assist them rather than replace them? When you're training your AI algorithm, who are you training it on? So they actually created some of their own training data, and one of the guys would go out into the field and the other one would take a photo of him. And I said, okay, this is great if it's a middle-aged Danish person that's male that's missing, that wears the same kind of clothes as you. But what happens if it's a child? What happens if it's someone else wearing different clothes? So I think, again, these sort of reflections, once you practice, you can get very good at. And now I feel like it's just part of how I do engineering. It's really quite intuitive once you have this perspective. So anyone can learn it.
Thank you. We have 2 questions from John in the chat as well. What is initial reception of your book? Are corporations paying attention? And the second one is, does your work consider wildlife? I guess the drone in question here, does it consider wildlife? Those are the 2 questions from John.
Yeah. Yeah, about the reception of the book. I mean, it's a very specific topic. I didn't expect that it would be on the New York Times bestseller list. But when I was talking to publishers, they sometimes gave me the feedback that it was a very narrow topic. And I was like, good, I want it to be narrow because I want to write directly to engineers. And I think that I've been able to do that. There's a couple of different people reviewing the book. So I'm interested to hear what they say about it. I'm very, very excited. Yeah, so it's really hard to say about the reception. I don't yet have any numbers about how many people have bought it or seen it. So yeah, time will tell. Let's see. I see something about corporations. That's a good question. So I think that there is quite a big gap between us and academia and people in industry. and that's sometimes quite a challenge. I have been engaged quite a bit with AV-Drone in the Netherlands. We have another project with them which kind of relates to the other question about wildlife. So we have a project called Wild Drone, which is a Marie Curie network funded project. We have 13 PhD students spread throughout Europe and Africa, and we're mostly looking at wildlife monitoring in Kenya. So this is really exciting. And AV-Drone is one of the partners there. So yeah, 2 weeks ago, I came and gave them a similar talk, and I was like, I'm really cautiously optimistic about what companies can do, because at the end of the day, companies produce stuff that's out there in the world. Yeah, I basically have built prototypes, but I haven't made any production drones. So it's very, very exciting what they could do. But also they have this limitation, or they have to make profit. They have to, or most companies' objective is to make profit. So that's sometimes you have a value conflict there. Does that answer?
Thank you.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I could
We
say
have
more
another.
wildlife
Yeah,
as well, or sorry.
We have two questions again. One from Edmond. This is Haiti Flying Labs,
Oh, nice.
asking how can Flying Labs benefit from programs in this domain? I think his question is more about education and drone design, asking how can Flying Labs in the network benefit from this kind of program?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Flying Labs would benefit because then you will be making drones that will directly support people in the area. So then I think they would be very happy to have those drones there. Yeah, so then it becomes more of a co-development process. I think that my impression is that We Robotics is quite good at engaging with local people, and you have this nice procedure for implementing drones in a context and getting people to understand what it is that you're doing. But I think this can always be improved, and perhaps an additional variable that can be optimized is the design of the drone, so that it's even more contextually appropriate. So I'm thinking about even just modifications to existing drones. So like painting, if you're in Denmark, you might want to paint your drone like the ambulance if you're working with the ambulance. Thinking about privacy, maybe you could do some modifications to the camera system of some of your drones. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to rebuild everything completely out of wood, although that might be kind of cool too.
Yeah, I think we have a few Flying Labs in the network who have actually designed the drones. I can think of Zambia, Colombia, or Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
A few other Flying Labs who have actually designed low-cost drones.
Wow.
And the second question here is from Samuel. In the affordability aspect, how can we leverage on ethics and development and make sure values are upheld? So balancing affordability and ethics.
Yeah, actually, to a certain extent, I think that affordability has an ethical dimension, because if something is inaccessible to people, then to a certain extent, it makes it unfair. So, for example, in Scandinavia, we have universal healthcare, and of course, healthcare is expensive, but we make it universally available because it's more fair that everyone has access to it. And I think a similar approach could be used with drones or technology. So I see, a lot of universities developing very expensive, very high-tech stuff. And I think that if we were to actively engage with developing lower cost technologies, and also reusing components, using electronic waste, these kind of things. So this bamboo drone behind me, I had some students looking into using old motors from old electric drills and using old laptop batteries, and basically making things more repairable, more circular. I think this would be a vast improvement, but you just see a lot less investment in research in these kind of things. Everybody wants to do high-tech stuff. Nobody wants to do sort of simple and contextually appropriate stuff. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, and the last question here, the latest question here says, what's good practice for drones in agriculture? Actually, this is something I've always wondered. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, actually, I have not worked too much in drone agriculture. To me, there are similar issues to drones in agriculture as there is in robotics in agriculture. I think we should consider about the workforce. You know, are we designing a drone to help the workers? Are we designing a drone to help replace workers or get rid of them? Are we using them to try and keep people safe? So it's very much about the work, the type of work, and the economics of the work. As far as the practical aspects of it, I mean, drones could be quite useful. They have some quite nice sensors that could give you some insights into how to manage your fields. So one project I'm working on now is called, we call it Coffee Drone, and it's with some partners in Uganda. And we think we can use thermal cameras to figure out when the coffee plants are under water stress. So when they might soon need water, or basically we want to detect lack of water before the plants actually start to suffer.
Yeah.
So we might be able to do this with thermal cameras. But again, when you fly around with thermal cameras, there's a lot of privacy risks. You could really very easily track people and do a lot of other not so nice things. So I think this is something you need to consider.
Yeah. On the coffee project, I think we've had a similar project as well between robotics and Uganda Flying Labs. That was, I'm not sure, Kaya, do you recall what Uganda Flying Labs project was about? The one on coffee?
Yeah, it was about estimating the yield using drones. And working with, generally this project was about building or strengthening the local capacity of the farmers so that they would know what are the capabilities, what the drones could be used for, and how they could benefit from the technology. Most of the Flying Labs projects will touch on that aspect, and it's going to be very important, that community engagement. Sorry, I'm gonna put the camera on. That community engagement aspect, and like I said, strengthening the capacity. Sometimes it's much more difficult as a process to do. It's much more time consuming to do it this way. But everything we do is focused on sustainability.
Sure. I guess like cultural sustainability as well as environmental sustainability.
Yes. Yeah, but also just making sure that the projects can be continued within the community after the Flying Labs is done working on that project, so that the local stakeholders know what to do with the drone data, know how to go about the data collection, how to use these drone data sets to solve local issues. So yeah, I'm sure that many of you Flying Labs members could tell Dylan more about it. So feel more than welcome to unmute and add your comments as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had a question for the room, because you also say that you do drones for good. Like, how do you know? How do you know that you've benefited people, and how do you know who you've benefited?
This question is for the audience, so feel free to unmute.
And that's a good question. I'm also curious to hear from the Flying Labs. I'm not sure we've ever had this question asked in the webinars, or we've ever had this discussion within our even internal webinars. Is there anyone who would like to comment on that? You can unmute yourselves. I think that would be actually preferred, so that we can talk to you as well and not just feel like we're talking to the to the screen.
Because we have a similar slogan, drones for the benefit of society, that you do. So this is a question I get asked a lot from my leadership. How do you know?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so Jamaica Flying Labs, we actually well, we say we use drone for good. What we do, we use it for disaster recovery, how we can assist local government in Jamaica. The last couple of days, we would have done a few flights just to do reconnaissance study after we had some heavy torrential rainfalls that caused some flooding. So for disaster recovery and in disaster management, that's one of the areas that we use drones for good.
Okay. So if I understand you correctly, the idea is that if you work in a good use case, then you can say that the ethics is pretty good. I would tend to agree with that as well. Yeah, I think there's always a bit of nuance to it. There's been a couple of nice papers written about the ethics of search and rescue robotics and drones that I suggest that you could probably find. For example, they talk about like the fact that people are quite vulnerable in a search and rescue situation. So sometimes it's like their privacy, their dignity doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is keeping them alive, which of course is a very high priority. But yeah, I think these other aspects could be relevant to consider. Also, I think just like who has access to the data is something to think about. What kind of data is being collected? Can you minimize the amount of data that's required to find people and help them? I think that would be nice. Also, just, again, like this search and rescue drone that I propose, wouldn't it be cool if there was a human-human interaction? You know, it wasn't just some drone or some kind of robot or technology coming up to people and they don't know what's going on. I think it could be quite nice to actually be able to connect with someone through this telepresence system.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dylan. This was a very interesting discussion. I wish we could go on and on for a much longer time, but maybe in future we can have another discussion with you and also hear more from the Flying Labs. I think we are slowly coming to the end of our webinar. I would like to express gratitude to Dylan for this presentation. I don't know if you're open to anyone contacting you directly. You can share, maybe you can share your email in the chat if you want, or also your website.
Sure. Yeah, and I will actually send you a copy of the presentation as well, and you can distribute it. That would be really nice.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dylan, and everyone who joined the webinar. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Good luck out there in the field.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Dylan. That was great.
Cheers.
Yeah.
See you.
Thank you.